Hey guys, welcome to Control Alt Escape. This is our first video, so thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to be using this platform to focus on music and visual art from the past and the present. We both have a soft spot for vaporwave and its subgenres, so we'll have a lot of content pertaining to that as well. We have lots of awesome content planned for you, including album reviews, interviews with artists, retrospectives, and more. If you like what you hear today, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to our channel. We recently sat down with Pete Curry, aka FM Skyline, to chat about his new record, Lightwear, and to find out about the man behind the moniker. He speaks on everything from his visual and musical inspiration to the time it took to perfect the project. We hope you enjoy hearing an inside look into the mind of this great artist. You can follow Pete on Twitter at PDPabloHoney and on Instagram at FM_Skyline, as well as directly support him over on his Bandcamp page. Lightwear is available now on all streaming services, as well as available for purchase on a beautiful 12-inch vinyl over at 100% Electronica. We'll have links to everything in the description. Thanks again for tuning in. Here's the interview. All right, well, we've been listening to the new record that you sent us, and we're loving it. Figure we might as well just dive right into that a little bit. Do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for sending us the record, for talking with us. We're listening to it yesterday, taking notes. I think maybe like a entry point for the conversation of the record is, to me, it really felt like there was a strong quality of sort of like a sonic textural thing, as far as, you say it in the song names and everything. It seems very evocative, like reflective, sort of bouncy like texture, like these reflective surfaces, and I think that goes so well with just overall aesthetic of the record. Can you let us know if that was like a strong sort of thought going into it, or is that, just sort of the natural progression of what you've been doing with FM Skyline?
Yeah, it's definitely a conceptual album. I think I've sort of narrowed down what FM Skyline does is pretty much, like conceptual kind of thing, rather than like experimental. That
Sure.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, Lightwear is definitely. I was trying to focus on that mental image that you have. Is definitely what I was trying to evoke.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about things that reflect. I had a long list of words that I made that were, I just tried, I was just sort of spitballing with myself, like everything that is like clear or transparent, like any kind of material. I was trying to pull together as much imagery like that as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that came through like crystal clear. We were really loving the sounds from the entire album. There wasn't a song we disliked on it. Can't wait. I just pre-ordered the album, on vinyl today, just a few minutes ago, so can't wait for that to show up.
I can't wait to see it either.
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be awesome, man.
How long were you working on the project, Pete?
This is probably the longest I've taken with an album in a long time, because I sort of was like going through this sprinting phase for a while, and I kind of slowed down a little bit with Advanced Memory Suite just to really hone it. So Lightwear has been in progress for a little over a year now, probably. Well, it's almost May, so yeah, it's probably almost a year and a half that it's been in progress.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Which is long for me, because I think it's been good for me to sort of stop just kind of sprinting and just like content barraging, and to like focus on records a little bit more. So Lightwear is definitely, it's sort of my highest kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that definitely, you mentioning earlier about how it really, you seem to have approached it more from a conceptual viewpoint. I think that really does show, and I mean, of course, that seems like it would reflect in the time that you spent working on it. Do you think there's a particular aspect of it that may be a little bit more challenging for you, that you felt like it took you a little bit longer, or was it more kind of just a thing of really wanting to just be a perfectionist about it and really nail down that kind of how we were mentioning earlier, sonic textural imagery qualities?
I think I spent the most time on the visual aspect, the art, thinking about what the artwork was going to look like, because I had all these images in my head, and I was trying to get, and was trying to pick the right one. And I like to keep my imagery really simple, so that it, like, and memorable. So it was hard to sort of pull all the different images that I had. I had like, this huge mood board of album covers and stuff that I was trying to be in the ballpark for. So I thought about that for a long time, and sort of like the names of things and the track listing. Like I really spent a lot of time with the track order. I like to like car test and drive and see how things scan, just like listening from front to back. I like it to have like an arc and a narrative. So I really fussed over that part a lot, if you can believe that. But so most of the music, I think, kind of came out pretty quickly, and there was a few tracks that I think were kind of written to serve a certain purpose in the narrative of the album.
Going off of that, is that why you decided to release Mirror Gallery as like the main single, I guess, through 100% on the live stream and everything to get some traction going forward? What was your idea behind that, essentially?
Well, Mirror Gallery was the third single. Have you seen all three singles?
Yeah, Polygon Park and Marble Madness as well.
So I picked the three that I picked were, I think they were the kind of the characters that are in the album. We felt like those three were kind of the most like, had their most distinct kind of characteristics to represent a few different things that are going on in the album. Like Mirror Gallery is sort of one of the longer tracks, so it has a couple different characters within it.
Yeah, because didn't you talk about it as like arranged and composed like a literal mirror from front to back, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I actually didn't realize that till I was just kind of stoned and sitting on Twitter last week.
Hell yeah,
but it actually does. It's, I mean, the midway point of the song by a margin of seconds is sort of like, there is like the middle. So I think when I called it Mirror Gallery was probably when I was first writing it. It just sort of what came to my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think it really is indicative of the whole like theme of the record as well, because I mean, from my point of view, it just sounds like mirrors and, you know, the textures and reflective surfaces, and I think that song, like, for me, encapsulates like the whole emotion and feeling of the record itself.
You know, Pete, I thought it was interesting that you were mentioning how you were really thinking about how to lay the order for the tracks and everything, because I think in particular where that sort of really showed itself are on the last two, Shadows and, can you remind me the
Shadows and Endless Sky, right?
Yeah, Shadows and Endless Sky. I mean, I think it felt very appropriate as to like those really did feel like they should be the last two songs of the record, you know. In particular, Shadows felt more kind of abandoning those higher notes and everything in lieu of kind of just letting those more bass carry the song and everything. Yeah. And I thought that the last song felt more like if the beginning, I wrote this in my notes, I felt like in the beginning, if it was sort of naively optimistic in sort of its feeling, the arc of the record, the last song, it feels like it's justified, like it really did come to that. So I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that's really tangible in the record for the last two songs in particular.
Absolutely. Awesome, thanks. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there's some touches that that are in there that sort of complete that as well. Like, there's sort of an arpeggio at the beginning of the album from the first track, Paradise Neon. And so I kind of I stuck that at the end of Endless Sky too, just to sort of increase that kind of. And I did that same thing because that's something I did on. I guess it's kind of really nerdy to be self-referential, but I did that with Earth Sam. If you're familiar with that album.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite of yours, honestly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely love that record.
Yeah. But Endless Sky. Another funny thing about Endless Sky is the version that's on the record. It originally didn't have that fast kind of fake breakbeat part towards the end. I actually put that part in when I was getting ready for the first 100% Electronic Con.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about playing it, and I was like imagining myself on the rooftop, and I was like, this needs to like go to 11 here. So I like added that part with the intention of it being really fun to play on that rooftop, and it just wound up being. I thought it was almost just like a live thing, and then I was like, oh no, this is totally part of the song now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome, man. How, you know, that was almost like a last minute change, but then it became permanent, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what's great about the creative process of making it. This stuff can always change like the last second. You know, you hear it and you're like, oh. And it instantly becomes, you know, it amplified it, elevated it from what it used to be. So.
Yeah, the first track was, I think one of the other things that I took a long time on was the first track. Originally had a very different kind of feel to it. It wasn't as energetic. And then I took the beat from Wobble Madness, and I sort of slowed it down to the tempo of that track and added this kind of big chord part that brought the energy up a lot. That was one of the only tracks that I kind of messed with for, that was sort of just like, what do I do with this? This isn't working yet,
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of had been done for like a year already.
Going back to Earth Sim here, I watched your the VR live stream that 100% did, and you did the visuals for your own set, right?
Yeah.
And so can you like expand about that a little bit? Because it was awesome. I love that.
Thank you. I've just been going really hard in Blender recently. I've been messing around in there for about a year. I'm just like, I'm a huge fanatic of Beyond the Mind's Eye, and that was one of the big inspirations for Lightwear. So since I've been in working in Blender so much, George was like, did you know that you can actually make these 360 videos in Blender? Here's some things that I found. And I was like, oh shit, that's pretty easy to create, just to create the scenes the way that I had been. And then, just a couple settings, and you have to set things up a certain way.
I know, I was just going to say, I think that is really interesting that you mentioned Beyond the Mind's Eye, and that whole series in particular is a huge inspiration for me as a visual artist. We're trying to get something going for the website where we want to interview Benny Tchaikovsky, who was actually involved in a lot of those early computer animations and everything. So I just think it's, excellent, like how everything lines up, and I think it just goes back to in the vapor community in general, just really how strong image associations are. And, again, with the record and everything just coming through so strong with that, it's just so vital, I think. So I think it's interesting you mentioned that. I was kind of wondering, I'm curious about Telepath working with you here and helping to master everything. I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit about what it's like working with him, in particular the aspect of him being, having such an aura of mystery around him and everything.
The man, the mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. What's it like for you to just sit and, work with him?
Well, he's an extremely nice guy. We got to hang out a little bit in New York, and we had a day together in LA, a really crazy day, hanging out with him, Eyeliner, Cat System Corp, Dan Mason,
heavy hitters,
Dan Christ. So it was fun. You would be surprised how unassuming of a human he is. But working with him, he's very polite, very professional, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But he has all analog gear. He's very religious about his gear, and it sounds incredible.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because I was talking with Dre about it, and he's obviously got his signature like slush wave sound where everything's very droning and drowned in reverb. We were kind of expecting to see like maybe a little bit of that sound come through on your record, but he made it sound so polished and like incredible, so like it was kind of surprising that when I saw that on your Bandcamp, I thought it was going to go in that direction a little bit, but then after listening to it, it was like it blew me away. It excited me, and I think that's awesome that he's so versatile. His mastering techniques don't just stick to what he does for himself.
Yeah. Those are, I think, the slush wave things are his secrets, and I don't think he would ever tell anybody what he was doing there.
Yeah.
I have my ideas, but what I was thinking about with mastering with him is actually some of his more recent stuff. Have you heard all of his newer like MIDI wave stuff that he's been doing?
I'm not sure. Is it on his Bandcamp?
Yeah. And he opened with that stuff. Did you guys get to go to either of the Electronicon festivals?
No, we're in Colorado, so we weren't able to. We're trying to make it to E3, but I don't know. Well, not the gaming thing, but I don't know when it's happening. So
nobody knows, unfortunately, right now. Bummer.
We're gonna try to be there for sure, though, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a? Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to finish up with the Telepath thing. Yeah, check out some of his more recent stuff. Like the song "Seaside Escapade" comes to mind. He's doing this like kind of MIDI wave stuff that is like I absolutely love. It's like my favorite thing. And so one of the records that I sent him as a reference was the Beyond the Mind's Eye soundtrack, the Jan Hammer, because that record has that really kind of pristine, crystally, production sound that I love, and I'm sort of trying to pay homage to with this record a little bit. Nice. One of the elements that I'm trying to pay homage to.
So then, is there a particular what if you had to try to pin down a quality as to what Telepath had added to the sound of the record, what do you think that would be? What is the main element that he really brought infused it with?
Well, his mastering brought a lot of warmth to it, actually, because I'm using extremely limited sounds. I'm using a FM emulator in the computer and a set of Lindrum samples, and those sounds can be pretty abrasive, especially just on a computer without any hardware. So there was a lot of warmth and a lot of clarity that his gear and his ear and his talent and skill added to that I think was essential, because it might have been a little bit too brittle of an album without any of that.
And you can really only get that quality through analog gear, you know, and I didn't know that about him. I kind of figured, you know, he was a gear nerd because of how in depth he goes into his stuff. That's really rad, man. It shows for sure.
Getting away from the record specifically, where do you see where everything had started with the community? Really, you know, the origin of Vapor. Now we're in 2020. People are trying brave and bold things. You know, every day me and John talk about how the desire more and more to just get away from like palm trees and the, you know, Greek bus and everything, which is, you know, fine sometimes. But it's not meme music anymore. Like there's really true artistry here. So I just was wondering if you could expound a little bit on that as far as like where you see everything going and how it's forming, taking shape.
Well, I'm hoping to exist somewhere that's, you know, you wouldn't encounter it in any of the synth, new retro wave categories, but it's not sampled, you know. So I want to exist somewhere that's, you know, I guess I would have to honestly say what I'm doing is like post vaporwave or something like that, realistically. But I mean, I still always look up to, you know, Daniel Patton, Vectroid, James I mean, I always look to them because they weren't looking at the tropes the same way. I mean, and there's nothing like, you know, I'm sure those guys, they must hate it or what, I don't know, but you know, just the innovation, you know, that they do. Like, I think they're consider themselves a certain category of serious electronic musicians, and I don't see why we shouldn't all sort of aspire to that kind of thing. And at the end of the day,
man. And
you know,
Oneotrix is a huge inspiration for both of us. I was living out in LA last year, and I got to see him at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. I went by myself because my friends didn't want to go. They didn't like his music. They thought it was weird. I just sat there, and it was the most incredible experience, man. So that's awesome that you said Daniel Patton. I mean, obviously, Chuck Persons, Echo Jams, you know, that's essentially where all this started, or caught a lot of wave. And,
and I still listen to that a lot. And then I'm
it's great. It's great.
Nothing wrong with me where I enjoy listening to this in my car, you know. All of us, that's all of us, right? But all of like his like just arpeggio albums, you know, just letting that keyboard he's got. I could listen to him just loop arpeggios on that keyboard all day. You know, I love that sound.
Drawn and quartered, man.
But like his conceptual, I love how he's a conceptual thinker. I think is what really makes it for his stuff. That was kind of one of the things that, you know, informed Vaporwave is he was a conceptual thinker. You know, like what music am I using and what is the visual is like the point of what he does, I think, for a lot of it.
Yeah, it's very cinematic. It's very like, everything's very cinematic sounding. You know, now he is actually scoring film. I don't know if you saw Uncut Gems or Good Time.
I didn't see Good Time. I saw Uncut Gems, yeah.
The soundtrack to that was amazing, man. So it's so awesome to see his progression over the years. Now, I mean, he started off, you know, thinking in cinematic terms of score, you know, in a fantasy setting, I guess. And now he's actually doing it. And it's just super rad to see that, you know?
It is. It's awesome. Yeah, he's really, like, become this sort of mega producer that he deserves to be, you know?
Yeah. Is there anybody sort of in the scene that, you know, perhaps when you had started with FM Skyline, you know, even before, you know, you had listened to their music and liking it and, you know, really going into that and then, you know, being able to speak or like work with anybody? Is there anybody in particular that stands out to you?
I think the things that motivated me into actually like participating in the genre anyway was probably, I think Eyeliner and probably Esprit were probably the two earliest things that I really felt like I understood musically what was going on immediately, and I felt like I could immediately go and communicate musically in the way that they were doing things. I think those were the two, because I was aware of the genre, I hadn't really messed with it. I think, but like Oh, it sounds like they're sitting on their computer with a MIDI keyboard making this stuff. Like I can, like it all connected. I think with those two guys first, probably for me.
Yeah, especially
Excellent.
I mean, I know Pat Chennington just released Virtua.zip video. But what he touched on when he said like it really changed the sound of vaporwave because George went so far away from sample bass, and I think that's interesting that you brought that up because it really had such an impact, and he didn't even realize it was going to, which is it seems like the greats are always like that. You don't even think anything of it, and all of a sudden it explodes.
Yeah, another record actually I should say that I was really into at the time was Bodywork, Negative Gemini, because I loved what she was doing. Because at the time, I didn't think that she was outside of vaporwave or anything, even though it's like housey music or whatever that you don't hear a lot of, But yeah. I thought that record was genius because it's like she had created this atmosphere that exists somewhere in this mythological like late 90s dance party vibe, but also somehow like Gran Turismo and and so I thought that was so cool conceptually, and so she stretched where everything could be. I thought with that record too. I was really into that record when I started FM Skyline as well.
So is that was FM your first venture into electronic music in general, or have you been making it before on different monikers before FM came to be? And essentially, how did you come up with the name, the vision for the project?
I had been messing around with sort of MIDI music for a while. I had a record that was sort of a solo project record called Night Logic, and it's sort of like this. It's sort of like a synth pop album. Has a little bit of the new retro wave thing, but it's kind of just this crazy manic album, a little more like tropic, but yeah, FM Skyline was my first sort of attempt to do anything vapor related at all. I didn't think about the name super hard, which is kind of funny because sometimes I'm like, is that a good name? I hope so. Because I'm stuck with it now. But we're just talking about, it was just like FM as in the synthesizer chip that's inside the Sega Genesis, and Skyline, like what would a Skyline look like if you painted it with FM synthesizers, basically was. I didn't think about it super hard, but that was what I thought.
That's rad, man.
Kind of, I thought it's funny that you just mentioned a Sega Genesis. I think in a lot of the tracks in the record, I mean, it does seem very reminiscent of like a Sonic level or something like that. Yeah. Or so many games that I had played as a kid, on the Nintendo 64. I thought that really struck me strongly. Do classic video game soundtracks play any sort of aesthetic inspiration to you?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest parts of my music because when I had been doing like instrumental sort of like composing in the computer, I think I didn't realize that it was really like working like video game music does, because it's like they have things that they're designed to loop so that you can listen to it for an hour and not go insane. But so they use these really genius little things with the hardware that they had, to make it enjoyable. And I just like that. I like that the way that they write, so that it's like you get some kind of sense of completion even within smaller parts is really cool, and makes sense to me, for the way I write. But for Lightware, yeah, definitely it's all like FM sounds and a drum machine, which is the other light in Lightware, because I've used lots of different things on other albums. So that was the other part, the light in Lightware, was that it's just these two things that you would find in a Sega Genesis or a Sega Saturn. They have a PCM. They can play drum samples and they can use FM synthesis. Those two systems. So that was definitely sort of the DNA of Lightware, was sort of it's operating like it could just be played on a Sega Genesis or a Sega Saturn. Yeah. Minimal stuff in the materials that create the sound.
Yeah, it shows for sure.
Is there a soundtrack in just out of curiosity? Is there a soundtrack in particular that you could listen to? It's like, man, this really takes me back. This hits me right in the spot. Like, for example, for me, playing Metroid as a kid, hearing that and just knowing even at that age, man, this is beautiful. There's just something to that sound. Is there anything in particular, a certain game or anything that sticks out to you in that way?
Yeah, there's a lot that I love, but I think probably especially closest to Lightware would be Sonic 3D Blast. Love that. There's a couple tracks on that soundtrack that I love. I had the game, when I was a kid. Yeah, that's probably or like Sonic 3.
No, and there's a sense of speed there. I mean, obviously, of course, Sonic in the game, and I feel that particularly in some of the tracks on the record. I believe it's Quartz Highway.
Yeah,
Records like that, I think that it really does. You know, when I'm thinking of the words to associate with the music, like a sense of speed, it really does. It does feel like that. So I love that. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
I'm glad that comes across because that was definitely one of the the goals. I was trying to make it. That's exactly what I'm trying to get people to think about because.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any additional questions before we wrap it up?
I mean, I think we've had a pretty good chat here. I don't have anything to really expand on at this time.
So what's coming? I guess before we end off, what's the future hold for FM Skyline? What are you planning on doing?
I don't know because I've been so focused on lightware and trying to figure out how to make videos that don't look like shit.
Yeah, I have the same problem.
In Blender, as an amateur blenderer, I've been so obsessed with it. So like I have, and because I wanted to stay, I didn't want to like be thinking about something over here while I'm trying to like do this long rollout for lightware. So I have a bunch of little things that are kicking around and little concepts that I've flirted with, but I'll probably I'm starting to think now like what's the concept for the next one. I really, if I can, I would love to get a video for every song on lightware and have it be my own Beyond the Mind's Eye. But I don't know if I'm gonna really put myself through that or not. But that stuff that I've done, all that video stuff, that's gonna become more of a starting point for whatever I do next. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Other than like an afterthought, trying to bring it all together, I think I'm gonna try to start from that kind of thing next time.
Well, hey, man, thank you so much for coming on, talking to
Absolutely.
us. We had a really great conversation. Thank you so much for the insight. When we do have Benny Tchaikovsky on, we would love to see, maybe if we could get a few quotes from you or something, just relating your love for the images, which is, what we all love as well. So we would love to have you on there if you'd like. But at any rate, yeah, man, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, man, and can't wait for the release. I think this one's really gonna pop off for you.
Absolutely.
And thanks for your help because this will be a help. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and you're helping us out too, man. So we really appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right, man. You take care. Have a good rest of your day, okay?
See you guys.
Man.
Have a good one.